Well, I think Mr. Notenboom's introduction about the excitement of payments is certainly well apt, and point taken about the lack of excitement this maybe drives on the street versus this room. But indeed, this is an exciting time for payments in Europe. And as we look across what most of us are expecting, which is, and we've heard this from both speakers already, a lot more innovation to come through, there is definitely innovation emerging across Europe. And this is going to benefit the economy, whether it's face-to-face transactions, whether it's e-commerce transactions. The life of citizens across the Union and across Europe are benefited through this innovation. And at MasterCard, we are certainly committed to innovative payments. We're also certainly committed to safe and secure payments as well. However, if innovation is to continue, we need to get the legislation right. All right. Now, MasterCard does share, and we've said this on many occasions, the end goals that the Commission is trying to reach, and particularly on the future of payments. But we are concerned, as I've just said, that in the current form, the legislation isn't necessarily going around about it in the right way to achieve the optimal outcome. And it's critical that all of us, and I think that's the point of today's debate, get it right. Put it simply, I have three items I want to sort of talk about. First of all, a one-size-fits-all approach doesn't necessarily work for everyone, and it doesn't help the development of payment systems and payments in general in Europe. That consumers, we need to be very mindful, don't suffer unintended harm or unintended consequences. And while we've made lots of progress on creating a level playing field in these two legislative packages, we still remain concerned that in certain cases, emerging players and certainly the so-called three-party schemes remain out of scope. So let me explain a little bit further. Fundamentally, the one-size-fits-all approach to capping interchange fees specifically, whether it's on the cross-border or on the domestic situation, don't really make sense. We fear, as I've said, that it will create unintended consequences for consumers. And, it ignores the very different aspects of one country to another. Now, I understand and heard both speakers prior to me talking about sort of the principles of creating the single market here in Europe. But at this time, markets do vary one from another. Whether it's one market has a different growth of its GDP or socioeconomic standings, markets do vary, and we need to sort of understand that. Likewise, for consumers, there isn't a single homogeneous consumer across Europe, and so we do need to be mindful as we consider this one cap size fits all. As a parent, 2 children, 1 5, 1 10, I can't take an approach of, well, I'm going to buy, one-size-fits-all pair of shoes, all right? I'm going to have to customize based on my 5-year-old or my 10-year-old. So it's that type of logic that we feel is lacking in the legislation. Concern isn't necessarily just theoretical. It's based on practical experience. We're a global company. We've already walked through this in Australia. Closer to home, we've tried to understand what's gone on in Spain, where we saw interchange force down. And that was largely done on an arbitrary basis without the understanding of the cost inputs, the risk inputs that it takes to maintain these systems and keep these systems safe and secure. And so when we take it back up to a European level and we try and understand a one-size-fits-all, we still haven't seen any empirical evidence to suggest that the proposed levels that are sort of in the proposed legislation today address these costs, address these risks. And ultimately, I fear, as I've said earlier, that consumers will bear the brunt. And when we talk about merchants, merchants, they gain in an electronic payments environment. They gain and benefit from card payments. And so, as we've said before on many occasions, just like today's forum, we feel that these costs should be evenly shared across all stakeholders. Ultimately, we feel that there's a fair and a balanced network out there, and I take the point of inviting, new incumbents into play. There's no challenge with that. But what we're bringing into question is we've been running and operating a system for close on 50 years that has had these balances and these checks around economics and sharing factors. I am very encouraged, and certainly as I speak on behalf of my company, we're very encouraged by the discussions that have gone on in Parliament. And both rapporteurs, Mr. Zalba and Mr. Feo, have really improved on the original proposals, and we've really welcomed and participated widely in the debate. However, it does remain to be seen how these discussions will evolve in time, and I still have a fair number of points or concerns as we move forward. You know, we do believe that the Commission has done a great job in terms of trying to include quasi four-party type models. Thank you. Quasi four-party type models, and you know, we're grateful that particularly in the interchange regulation that sort of has been captured. However, there's still a lot to be done, right? And the need for creating a level playing field is very much there. Today, in both packages, there is still a lot to be done to address emerging payment players as well as third-party schemes who largely, particularly in the interchange regulation, are out of scope. And ultimately, we've heard a lot of principles about creating a fair and a competitive marketplace here in Europe. And my fear is that we create distorted competitive environments, particularly against incumbent players. So by way of illustration, and in sort of making my penultimate comment, when legislators look at environmental legislation or passing safety legislation, say for cars, it would be unthinkable to say to that the legislation should cover amendments or language that would say for certain types of brands you are excluded from these safety legislations, from the environmental legislation, just because you're small. Why would you allow Volkswagen to sort of be captured in and exclude Range Rover? Well, that just wouldn't happen. So I've used hyperbole there to sort of extrapolate, you know, the competitive nature that we remain concerned about. And we think that there's still some good way forward as we move towards the plenary vote, as the trilogue begins, for good and healthy debate in ensuring a level playing field across the board. So in conclusion, we're very pleased with the progress that's been made. Our key concern is striking a right balance through both legislative proposals, that a one-size-fits-all approach doesn't really work for all Europeans, that consumers and particularly small merchants could potentially be the biggest losers in this environment, and that we need a fair and a level playing field for all parties. Thank you very much.